So this evening, I'm delighted to welcome another of the players from the mid-1990s featured in my book about Bury in that period. It's a defender who we all loved. It's Mr. Dean West. Dean, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Really good to see you.
And you as well?
You've not changed a bit.
Yeah, a little less hair.
Well,
on the head anyway.
So how did you learn of Bury's interest in you when Stan signed you? Because you joined in a swap with Kevin Hulme, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It wasn't actually Stan who made the contact. It was Sam Ellis. He'd been Lincoln manager when I was there. And when Sam left, he went to assist Stan at Bury. And then he basically just got in contact at the time when Steve Wicks had taken over at Lincoln, and Steve Wicks was having a reshape of the squad really. And Sam rang me and says, "Look, there's an opportunity at Bury. I've recommended you to Stan, and Lincoln are interested in Kevin Hulme, and they're interested in doing something." So that was how it came about. It was, no agent stuff and no press speculation as there is these days. It was a straightforward phone call from Sam to myself, and then the deal got done pretty quickly, really.
Well, I liked Kevin Hulme, but I think it's fair to say we got the best side of that deal. But it wasn't the first time that you'd been involved in Bury, was it? Because you had a trial when Martin Dobson was manager.
I did, yes. I think I was 15, 16 years old. I'd just been released as a schoolboy by Leeds. At the time, in pen and paper world before the internet came about. I wrote a letter to every club within 2 hours drive of my house in Leeds. And my dad took me to various clubs, within 2 hours driving distance. And Bury was one of them, where I went for a week and basically just trained with the youth team. I think it was at the time. I was obviously schoolboy age. And nothing came of it. I tried at various other clubs, and I ended up at Lincoln City. But that was my first sort of involvement at Bury.
When you did join, it took you a while to settle in. I seem to remember a story in the Bury Times where you apologised to the fans after you gave a bit back. Would you say that it was a bit of a struggle to settle in?
I would say so. Looking back now, yeah, at the time you don't really think about it that much because you're immersed in joining a new club and playing and the things that are going on around you. But looking back, I was travelling from Lincoln to Bury to start with, but also my parents lived at Leeds, and what I did was, I alternated, stayed over a few nights in Leeds, and travelled up to Bury, and then we made a day off. I'd go back to Lincoln because I just bought my first house in Lincoln at the time. So I just got settled, sort of thing, and then got a chance to move. So it was a little bit unsettling, but then were the days when people did travel and everybody didn't live local. Do you know what I mean? So it took a while to settle, and the team wasn't doing particularly well to start with, and it was a bit unsettling in the fact that I think the League Cup as it was, Bury was still involved in that, and I had already played for Lincoln in the League Cup, so I couldn't play in the League Cup games. So it was a bit in and out to start with, and we wasn't playing great, and it wasn't gelling. But I suppose it did take a while to settle in. And I do remember the incident where I got some stick from somebody in the crowd. I think I stuck two fingers up at somebody in the crowd who'd been effing and jeffing and threatening me and all that sort of stuff all the way through the game that was playing. I just gave him it back. I stuck two fingers up at him and told him what to do. I think he felt offended by it, but obviously I wasn't allowed to be offended by it, but obviously he was, and he wrote a letter to the club saying how disgusting it was. So Stan got me in the office actually and said, "Look, he says, I've had a letter, just write a letter back to him, tell him you apologise, and I'll tell him I fined you 2 weeks' wages," and that's the end of it. So that was the way it was dealt with. But I do remember, I can't remember what game it was, but it was one of them guys. I played on the right-hand side in the first half, in the front of the stand where he was giving me some stick, and then the second half, I played on the left-hand side. So I was in his view all the time. So I couldn't get away from me, couldn't get away from me. But Yeah, I suppose that it was a bit unsettling to start with, but as you'll know, as a Bury fan, we did turn it around, and then once we turned it around and started playing well and got a settled side, we never looked back really.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, when it did settle down, it went right to the end. And when you had those games down there was one up at Darlington, which we lost 4-0, one away at Exeter where we drew 1-1. Did you kind of feel it was slipping away from us? And what's the sense of relief like when we did get promoted with that win against Cardiff and we had to wait for the Scunthorpe Darlington result?
Yeah, I can't remember the Darlington game, if I'm honest. I remember the Exeter game. Was it a 1-1? Was it a penalty?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think I got brought down for the penalty. That's why I remember it. And then obviously the waiting at home. Because I don't know what the delay was at Scunthorpe, and for whatever reason, but we just sneaked in there, didn't we? And I remember the result coming through because we were all stood near the tunnel. Basically, there was no sort of like not that many press in them days, and they were just waiting for a phone call or something through the radio. And then when it came through, it was we'd got promoted.
And then, did you feel confident for the next season playing in the third tier?
Well, it was a bit of an unknown, really. Do you know what I mean? Because we'd got promoted, and we'd gone away in the summer together, and got that celebrated, and it was a good summer when you've been promoted. My first promotion as a player, and then you go into the next season, pretty confident because you've been on the back of a lot of wins and been successful. So you always believe that you're going to be, in there fighting. And we had a good side, as you know, and it developed over that summer and through that season as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to go off piste with some of the questions that I was going to ask you, we did sign a lot of really good quality players that summer. Ronnie Jepson, Dean Kiley coming to the club, and I think it showed that we did mean business, didn't it?
Yeah, good business, good experience. I mean, there wasn't like a massive turnaround of the squad, but just little tinkering, and Stan created that experienced backbone, and obviously kept the lads together who he'd brought and gelled them together, and it snowballed from there really, and we had one hell of a season that season. I'm pretty sure you'll tell me because you're the statistician. Didn't we only let 7 goals in at home all season? And that sticks with me, that because I think somebody told me it was probably one of the best defensive records in the whole of Europe at some stage. Somebody threw that stat at me. I wouldn't know, and I'm only repeating what somebody told me. But I'm sure you'll be able to look that up and see if that's true or not. But we had one hell of a season, and really enjoyable. And we it was momentum that took us there, but we had some good players as well.
What are the games that stick out for you that season?
Now you're asking me, how many years ago was it?
Oh, it's only 20. I remember it clearly.
I wouldn't say. I mean, the game when there was Luton away and Watford away really late on. We play Luton and Watford in the last week leading up to the season finish, and then played Millwall at home.
That's right, yeah.
Is that correct? So we got a 0-0 draw at Luton on the Tuesday night, and then played Watford on the Saturday, was it?
Yeah.
So what was the Watford game? Was that, what score was that? Was that 0-0 as well?
0-0, yeah. Dino saved the penalty on 88.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember. It's weird because I remember 2 0-0 draws. Do you know what I mean? So they're the ones that stand out and then obviously the Millwall one. Was it 2-0 or 2-1?
2-0.
2-0. Jeppo scored one.
Yeah, and Lenny got the other.
And Lenny got the other one. Yeah. I think I've seen them recently on YouTube and whatever. I think you sent me a clip not so long ago when on Twitter. I think you put one up, and I think I crossed it for Jeppo, and I couldn't remember that actually. But when you look at it, it does remind you. But then you think how long ago it was.
You did put the cross in. It was right on his nut. It was one of the greatest crosses I've ever seen at Gigg Lane.
Well, it had to be because Jeppo wouldn't move anyway, so it had to be right on his head.
Just another game that season. You as a defender will probably remember this one if I say it. But Brentford away, real backs to the wall performance, and we hit him on the break 2-0. Dorsey scored the best goal of his life, and Spike got a penalty. Yes,
I do remember that now. Now you prompt me on that. it was a backs to the wall. You know, I think they were a team. They were up there most of the season. You know, flying high as such, and I think it was a pressurised. We needed to win that game to stay in the mix, I think. And it was, yeah. I've seen the goals obviously recently from a YouTube clip again, and it showed that we could compete with them sort of teams at that time, and we did ever so well down there, and got a great result.
Who were your mates in the squad at that kind of time? Who were everyone kind of, I wouldn't say you form a clique because there was a great team spirit, but who were the people in the dressing room you'd say, he's my best mate?
Lenny was always one that, obviously I'm still friends with him now, and good friends with him now, and I still see Len. Rob Matthews, he used to live over at Didsbury, so I used to go stay at his when I wasn't travelling from, staying in Leeds and things like that. So it was a case of, so Len was always, one of his best friend from football, as you call them these days, you know what I mean? And obviously kept in touch with him. Since we finished playing football, and we've become very good friends. And Rob was, a good friend, and we used to go out in Manchester together. I used to stay at his place in Didsbury. So we formed a good friendship there. Nick Dawes, I still keep in contact with him now, and obviously Chris Laketti. I see David Johnson every now and again. And football's a funny game, as the saying goes. You don't see each other for sometimes 20 years, and you bump into somebody, and it's like you've never been away from each other. You know what I mean? So we still bump into other lads from that era. But Len's my best mate, and I always say that to anybody who asks.
So you think about the season after we've won the championship. You just got back from Magaluf, as Stan wrote in his Stan the Man. How are you feeling about the 97-98 season? You're going to be playing one division below the Premier League, and you're going to be playing some massive teams. What's the mood like in the camp?
Same as the season before, with momentum, and we're thinking, well, we've got up there, and and everybody thinks, small club like Bury shouldn't be there and all that, but we'd worked ever so hard to get there, and we were going to have a good go. Do you know what I mean? And it was a case of Standard added a couple more players and what have you like, and it was we're ready to go.
How did you feel personally? Coming from a Lincoln side that was without wanting to sound disrespectful, just not really going anywhere in the basement, and then you join Bury. You've had 2 consecutive promotions, and you're thinking of all these games that you should be playing.
Yeah, say two seasons on the bounce, and then we're up in the big league as far as Bury got, and we look forward to it, and we was you're confident that sort of like momentum will help you to to do well. But it was like David and Goliath, wasn't it? Really, in that respect, we were going to stadiums that with 30,000 40,000 seat stadiums, like, and then bringing them back to Gigg Lane, whether 4,000 and 5,000. But we had a good go. Obviously, we stayed up the first season. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, stayed the first season with Stanley. Obviously, then Stan moved on. But that season, I played a handful of games at that start of that season, and then I got struck down by injury, which wasn't great, and wasn't a good time for me.
What was the injury?
Well, it was all related to my groin, to my hips. The season before, in the summer, we got promoted the first time. I had a groin operation, and had the summer to recover, and felt great going into the season where we got promoted again. And then towards the end of that season, like, I was not struggling, but you could feel things weren't quite right. And then had a good pre-season, felt okay. Season started and played only about 2, 3, 4 games, something like that.
Yeah.
And I pulled my groin in training the day before a game. I think it was at the Crew game on a Tuesday night.
Yes, it was.
I think I pulled my groin.
Saturday.
Pardon?
You'd played at Wolves the previous Saturday, and then we played Crew on the Tuesday.
Yes. So I think we played at Wolves, and then I pulled my groin in the game in the training session before the Crew game. It was a groin strain as such, like, and it wasn't getting any better. It took 3, 4, 5 weeks, and I'd train again, and it'd go again. So I ended up having an operation, which ended a simple hernia operation, and expected to be out for a couple of months, maybe a little bit longer. So that had taken us to Christmas and beyond. And then I was training again and trying to get back, and it wasn't quite right. I was having injections in there, and then I tore my adductor muscle on the obviously inside of the groin, out for another 6 weeks. Then just getting back again, and then I ruptured me groin muscle, came away from the tendon. So we had to have an operation to like fix that back on as such, like so. And I was having injections as well at the time, see what the problem was and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so that took basically to the end of the season. So that season was wiped out. And it got to someone, it was like a case of like, it should be okay for the start of the season. But obviously I think Stan left that summer.
Yeah, he did.
And then start of pre-season, and it just wasn't right. And then anyway, they had some more investigation, and then it turned out that I needed an operation on my hip, which was a labral tear, which was like a cartilage tear, but in the ball and socket joint and the hip, which basically was causing all the groin problems because it was me hips and me groin weren't aligned properly. And every time I exert myself, it was tearing my groin muscle basically. So so it was a hip operation that it was effectively going to put me out for 3 months. So August, September, October, and then I think I did eventually start playing November, start of December sort of time in that season. And looking back at it now, like I was never properly right really for about another year after that. Really, when I came back, do you know what I mean? I know I'd left in the following summer, but having over a year out with niggling in, not a major injury. It wasn't like it was a cruciate ligament at the time. It was just one thing after another with related to my groins and my hips, which just didn't work. And then once I eventually got fit, and I started playing again, but I wasn't the same player for them last 6 months that I played at Bury than what I'd been the previous 2 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How did you feel when Stan left, and what did you make of Mr. Warnock?
People always move on, and at the time, obviously, I wasn't as worldly wide as I am now, like, but he'd signed us. We'd done well for a couple of seasons, done really well, and obviously he moved on to Burnley, and it was his club that he wanted to go to because of the ties that he'd had with Burnley as well. It was like a dream move for him as such. So you're a bit philosophical about these things. It's players move on, managers move on, and that's the way things go. But as you know, it was a start of that side breaking up really, because the players started to get picked off then and have their own career paths at other clubs, and we'd all done well for Bury, and nobody begrudged anybody going to and sort of like further in the career really.
Yeah. I mean, when you did get back into the team, it was so unfortunate that you scored that own goal down at Swindon.
I can't remember that. What was that then? Just to explain that one to me.
Was it fairly late in the game? Cross came over and a striker would have been Mark Carter would have been happy with that goal.
Funnily enough, I do remember that. It was in late January, I think. We hadn't won away, and we were winning 1-0. Adrian Littlejohn had scored, and a cross came in from their right wing down our left side. And it came over at a nice height, and I was running back towards my own goal. So I thought I'll head this over the bar because that's where I was running. And I jumped, headed it, great connection, and it went right in the stanchion past Dean. Dino never moved. Absolutely beat him all ends up. And I remember just I curled up in a ball. It was like a Basil Fawlty sort of like moment. I curled up in a ball and just thought, right, scored an own goal, and it was a great own goal. As I think I watched it the next morning actually on one of the soccer programs, and Ray Wilkins called it a classic striker's header. But I do remember that game that Lenny was the one who came and picked me up after I'd scored it. So that just shows you what sort of teammate and friend he was. Yeah. So he came and sort of like picked me up and said, "Right, we'll get on with it." Do you know what I mean? So but we had 3 more months to get out of trouble. You can go back to one game and say, that 1 point would have kept us up, but we had 46 games to get another point. So I wouldn't sort of like beat myself up about it because as I say, it's a team game and a squad game, so it wasn't all down to one game or one moment in that season.
Yeah, very philosophical. Yeah. I always felt Neil Warnock chucked you under the bus a bit when you decided to leave, because he had a column in the Bury Times, and I wrote this in the book, and I quoted him word for word what he said, and it was something like, Dean West told me he wants to leave to join Burnley, he thinks they're a bigger club, and I thought that was really not on of him personally. And I think that's probably the reason why you got quite a bit of stick when you came back on Boxing Day 1999 when Bury were 4-0 up at half time. So, firstly, what did you think about the way that you left? And secondly, what do you remember about that afternoon when Bury absolutely hammered Burnley?
I don't remember Warnock making them comments, because obviously I didn't live in Bury, so I didn't often get the Bury Times, so weren't aware of them, and obviously no social media in them days, so you weren't sort of like engrossed in every bit of information that came out of the club or that was going around at the time. Listen, he's probably he was telling the truth. Obviously I got an offer from Burnley at the end of the season. Bury had made me an offer before the end of the season, and listen, it was a career move, and I think I ended up doing an interview and saying that. And fans are loyal to their club, aren't they? And it shows if they were upset. That's I say good on my part, really, because they appreciated me and wanted me to stay. So, but I don't think you could argue with it at the time. And obviously, Burnley a bigger club than Bury, and that team was breaking up at the time, and people were going their own ways. I think the only thing that they were probably concerned about is that most players had gone for a fee, and I went for free, which looking back at it, if I hadn't been injured, maybe I may have gone sooner for a fee, like Lenny obviously went for a fee. So, but that's just the way things worked out. Do you know what I mean? And it's one of the things I got on okay with Neil Warnock. I had no qualms with him, and he went on to further his career as well at other clubs. So players and managers move on. So you remain philosophical about it, but it doesn't. The pleasure I had playing for Bury, and the way I think about the club now is still the same. Enjoy my time there. Loved it to bits, and it was basically where we grew as a team and as a squad, and I've got some good friends that I made while playing there. So it was a really enjoyable time of my career. And the game where we came back to play, I remember it well. 4-0 down at half time, and I got dragged at half time. I think Stan was saving me from the abuse I was getting as well. So, plus we had a game on the Tuesday, a few days later against Oxford as well, which I think he realised we were getting beat 4-0. I think he made 2 or 3 substitutes, picked 2 substitutes at half time, and I think we ended up winning at the Oxford the game after. So I'd just call that a blip, I would say.
Well, it certainly was en route to a promotion with Burnley, and signing players like Ian Wright. It was totally on another level to what we were experiencing at Gigg that season. But as you say, you went to Burnley and you joined Stretch, you joined Jeppo, and you joined Lenny. And as you say, Lenny's your best mate in football, and he's been an absolutely inspirational figure over the past few months since he made his diagnosis public. Obviously, him and his family's lives have changed dramatically. How have you been able to help them?
Well, first of all, just by being a friend and being there for him. Do you know what I mean? When he told me, obviously quite a while before he went public with it, so I've known for a long time. Which was it was good in some respects, but bad in others. It was good that he wanted to tell me, and he could tell me very early on. But obviously, he couldn't go public with it because he hadn't told his kids and his close family. Do you know what I mean? There's only him and his wife, and myself and one other person who knew he had to keep it under wraps until the time was right to tell his kids. And it was I felt a bit privileged and a bit upsetting as well, having to share that knowledge. But I know it helped him, and then. It sort of, I think as I explained before, like as footballers, we probably didn't see each other as much or speak as much as we, because I live in Lincoln, he was in Preston, so it's a long way away, so you didn't actually, see each other that often. But I made a point of, scouting at the time for Lincoln City, so if I ever went to the Northwest, I'd go up and stay with him on a Friday night before I went to watch a game and things like that, and then I'll maybe stay after the game and go out with him Saturday night. So we made use of the sort of like the time, because he was still, still able. You couldn't tell that he had MND. So it was, just having a bit of a good laugh and just having a catch up, really, from not seeing each other and being close friends since we left football. But we'd always spoke to each other. But it just brought us, that bit closer together. And then, then later on, we've set up a trust fund for Len and his family, which the PFA were involved in. So myself and Paul Turley, which is Len's best mate from school, have set up a trust for Len and his family. And obviously, closely, Len does loads and loads of work for MND. So we try and tie it in with, making donations from the trust as well to MND and raising awareness as well for it. But the trust is set up for him and his family because obviously the PFA have helped him really well by adapting his house and buying equipment and things like that. There's always something else that may need, so that the trust helps in that respect. So it's always going to be there. The golf days and any other events that we've been involved in, charity matches and things like that. We've got enough contacts to keep things going, and we try to organise 2 or 3 big events a year, golf days and things like that, to raise funds. But obviously, the last 12 months haven't been great with what's going on in the world, so we haven't been able to organise a lot of things. But once things, do start to improve, we'll start organising more events and keep them going and make sure they're annual events to raise money for the trust and also raise awareness for MND.
Well, it really is really nice to hear that a friendship such as that was forged at Gigg Lane, and I'm sure myself and every other Bury fan who watches this interview will feel a sense of pride about that. And I think that's a really nice place to leave it, Dean. Just thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all, James. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.